So about 5 months ago, I made this video showing off what my Valve index looked like after a very hard 1000 hours of usage. Long story short, I had a slew of issues with my index. Some were small issues that were minor annoyances, and others were major issues like the headphones completely dying and my right trigger refusing to work on the knuckles. Well, this is that very same index, just 5 months later. It seems that I was one of the first to receive a consumer index full kit, and over 10 months of almost daily usage, I've encountered some pretty major problems, but I do believe that most of them are somewhat avoidable if you follow the tips that I've learned over time, which is why I'm making this video. I'm hoping that other people's indexes last longer than mine. Plus, I believe I was one of the first to encounter a pretty major flaw in the index's design that will likely also happen to you, deeming your headset unusable, unless you're watching for certain things. So after speaking with hundreds of index owners, using mine for far too much of my life, here are my results with the Valve Index after 10 months and more than 1,300 hours of nearly daily usage. Let me start with the failure that literally happened as I was going to record gameplay footage to put in this video. One of my Index's 2.0 base stations has failed. I got the dreaded red light of death, and now it's up to Steam support to get me a new one. Unfortunately, base stations are practically all out of stock, so ironically, looks like I'm gonna have to use one of these. Luckily, I had a set of base station 1.0s from this Cosmos kit, so I could at least play in VR while I'm waiting for a replacement. This problem isn't because of anything in particular, just some people get really unlucky and have to deal with random hardware failures. The sad part is that this is kind of a common problem with base stations in general. They have a reputation for being pretty delicate, and one of the only things you could do is just not touch them, put them up on the wall, and forget about it. I've been decently good about that with mine, but it looks like I just got a bad one. If you do some research or have just talked to people that were early adopters of either the Vive Pro or Index, both of which use the base station 2.0s, you'll see that this red light of death happens more often than I'd like to see. And there's really no solution other than send it back. So there's issue number one. Half of my tracking just died. Not because of a handstand and not because of shaken base station syndrome, just it died. Next up, let's talk controllers. So you can see my original controllers have been used so much that the finish is literally falling off of them. I love the knuckles, whether it's VRChat, Half-Life Alyx, Pavlov, it doesn't matter. Games are usually just better with them. Having finger tracking feels amazing. Actually grabbing guns or objects feels natural, and it's genuinely an improvement to the gameplay experience. It's no gimmick. But the controllers aren't perfect either. Here is what will happen, not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Your controllers will squeak. All it takes is a little blowing on the trigger or a quick shot of compressed air to fix it, but your controller will squeak and it's going to be annoying. Going along with triggers, there's a very real chance that your trigger, particularly the trigger on your dominant hand, will stop registering any input. That's what happened to my original right controller, and it's the reason for me opening an RMA for it, which Valve did replace it, no questions asked to be fair. I mean, it kind of makes sense. If you're right-handed, you're using that trigger to navigate menus, shoot things, interact with the worlds that you're in. It has to be one of the most used buttons on the controllers, but like I said, you're going to have a range of issues either from squeaks to total failure at some point. Now, I will say that total trigger failure is pretty uncommon. What is not uncommon, however, is thumbstick drift, particularly on the left controller. In case you don't know what thumbstick drift is, it's where your thumbstick will start losing its tightness and you'll begin having a bunch of unwarranted controller inputs. Eventually, you'll find your avatar or character just slowly moving in any direction without even pressing anything. There are a couple ways to fix this. One of them is by setting your controller dead zones to wherever you stop getting drift, but once you start getting drift, it's only going to get worse. I started at a 10% dead zone, then a couple weeks later, I was at 20%. Now I'm at 30%, losing a massive section of my thumbstick's usability. This again is a controller that is in the process of an RMA. Steam already agreed to send me a new one, so sweet, I guess. But that doesn't mean I'm happy about the problem in the first place. So some people get drift quickly on their knuckles. For me, it took 8 to 9 months to start getting drift, but once I got it, it got bad really fast. From talking with others, I think I've devised a general plan to limit the chances that you'll get drift. Just rebind your thumbstick click. It'll likely change between games and will take getting used to, but it seems like the more you click, the more likely that you'll get drift. You know, there's something funny about this RMA as well. Every return request Valve asks asked me to send a serial number. But the serial number is located on a place in the knuckles where your hand is always on. And over time, the text that was printed there is completely rubbed off. Luckily, Valve was understanding this matter and went through with the RMA anyways. So you'll notice every problem that I've listed so far is a wear issue. It's not neglect. It's not a matter of not taking care of your $1,000 device. These are all issues that I've gotten from simply using the headset, controllers, and base stations as intended, which sucks. I have a 4-year-old Oculus CV1 right here that works, and I'm onto my second index already. But wait a second, that's right, my second index. Not only did I have to get both controllers and one base station replaced, but the entire headset itself. There's one crippling issue with the index that hasn't started popping up until now for most people, and I think it's mostly because it's a ticking time bomb of a wear issue. But first, let me address a couple things with the actual HMD. First off are the headphones. The audio on the index is fantastic and certainly best in class for all VR headsets, but you should take care to maintain them. My right ear stopped working in my headset. However, removing the headphone, then cleaning the contacts a couple times and tightly securing it back to the strap did fix it for a while. Then it happened on the left headphone and I repeated the procedure. It's super easy to do. All you need is a T6 driver and a couple minutes. And if you're having issues with the audio, this should sort it out. I should point out though that my right ear did end up completely failing after about 9 months of usage. Also, one of my biggest problems with the index beyond just things flat out breaking was the material of the stock facial interface being pretty hard to thoroughly clean. Don't get me wrong, it's really comfortable, but after 6 months of hard usage, you'll pretty much have to get a new one, especially if your play space is warm or you just sweat a lot. The material will start smelling absolutely awful, and it didn't matter what chemical bath I put it through, it just needed a replacement. I said last time I talked about this that I heard VR Cover was releasing a faux leather accessory, and at the time it was just a rumor, but that has actually launched since then and made my time with the index a much more hygienic, less moist experience. Seriously, sweating in your interface, cleaning it off, then getting back into VR a few hours later to wet, itchy cloth in your face is not a great experience. Now I just wipe off and disinfect my VR cover and voila, everything's nice and clean. If you don't like the pleather feel, you could of course just buy replacements from Valve, and it's not all that expensive. But if you use your headset a lot, you're gonna be buying them every few months, at least if you want to stay clean. Especially with streaming in a hot room like I have been, where it doesn't matter whether I'm playing VR chat or pistol whip, I'm gonna be sweating, and it just made my life a whole lot better. But now, the big problem, the index breaking problem. All of the issues so far have been things that you could more or less deal with. You have drift, you could mess with settings and get to a point where games are at least playable. Both of your headphones break, then take off the stock headphones and replace them like you have to do with the Quest or Rift S anyways. My point is here that you could still use the headset in theory with most of these problems. But what if there is one major flaw in the index's design that will eventually result in your headset becoming unusable? Well, it might be a real thing. It happened to me first and I thought it was a me thing. One day I noticed it looked like individual pixels were firing randomly all over my index's display. I was still able to play games, just especially against dark backgrounds. It felt like I constantly had a Starry Night overlay over everything. Then I started getting audio popping at random times, and finally the index just started disconnecting randomly. After about 20 disconnects over a week, dead streams, and crashed games, the index just completely died and refused to connect to the PC at all. I contacted Valve, they replaced the headset, and I moved on. Figured I just got unlucky. But the past month or so, this exact issue has been popping up all over my feed. Between other friends in the YouTube space, to my own Discord, Reddit, it just seems to be a delayed issue. I don't know exactly what it is, but I have an idea and I think I know how you could avoid it. I'm guessing that the problem is with the cable. Whether it's the actual cable or the HMD side connector, I'm not sure, but I'm nearly positive this is where the issue stems. You'll see my original cable on the index that I used for more than 1,200 hours and for 9 months or so has actually began breaking. But even if there's no damage on the sleeving of the tether, others have reported the same symptoms. So where did this cable breakage come from? The answer is likely this little broken cable holder. Now, I thought my first headset's holder broke because I was just being a little too rough on it. I mean, I have a pulley system set up, I dance in VR chat, I sleep in VR occasionally, I go hard in Pavlov, but asking around, this is a serious weak spot of the index. I don't know anyone that has used the index for even close to as long as I have in the types of games that I play that has not broken this little tab. I didn't think anything of it and figured, well, it sucks that it broke, but it's just something small. Well, I think the excess movement of the cable from not being held down against the head strap will eventually lead to the cable or connector completely failing. Now, believe me, it's in your best interest to just not break this tab no matter what you do. And I've been extremely careful about about it with my new headset that I got from Valve, but it just happened again. There was no tugging, there was no pulley system this time, there was no breakdancing. I turned my head fast in Boneworks, it pulled the cable fast, and it just snapped off. It's a problem with the design, and if left unchecked, it'll likely render your headset unusable, unless you either replace the cable or get a completely new headset from Valve like I did. So no matter what, I recommend you right now, if you have an Index, do this fix. Grab some electrical tape, tape both sides of the little tab of vulnerability. If it's not broken, this will likely better support that little tab. If it is broken, you need to tape or find a way to secure your cable so that it's not moving around so much. If you don't do this, it's likely that your cable or connector will die faster than if it was held down to some degree. It looks like the cable routing by Valve was done in a certain way, and if you break the tab, it breaks the dexterity of the cable routing. Of course, this is all pretty much my best guess as to why mine and a lot of my friends' Indexes have been dying from the exact same issue. I compiled what everyone's headsets look like, whether their cable holder was broken or not, and looked at the condition of the cable itself, and it seems very much so that these two things are connected in some way. Also, one more thing, this will happen to your Index, but I found it to be a non-issue. The glue around the rubber eyepiece will fall apart and begin getting all over the lenses. Don't freak out, just clean off the remaining glue and you'll be fine, trust me. So, do I still recommend the Index, even after all these issues and literally having to replace every bit of my Index kit in less than a year? I mean, the kit comes with 2 base stations, 2 controllers, and the headset. I've had to get a new base station, 2 controllers, and a new headset. That's not very cool. But in terms of recommendations, it's hard not to still recommend the Index. It's the best PC VR experience you can possibly have for $1,000. The Index has problems. Some of them are giant and glaring, like controller drift and the newer cable failures. It honestly really sucks. But here's the dilemma. Literally no one is doing what Valve is doing. You can't get VR controllers as good as the Knuckles. You pretty much can't buy base station 2.0s with the best tracking available from anyone other than Valve. And you can't get a headset that is as comfortable, has nearly as good audio, has as high of a resolution, FOV, and refresh rate from anyone other than Valve. So flat out, do I still recommend it? Yes, I do. It's the best PC VR headset at the moment, and you'll love it until it breaks, which it likely will at some point. The positive side is that Steam support is extremely helpful and will replace the broken parts of your Index for free and without questions asked, but I don't know of anyone that says, yeah, it'll break, but they'll fix it for you for free as a true positive. I'd rather just my devices not break in the first place, especially not within less than a year. Right now, I'm kind of just waiting for someone with a little more experience making hardware to do what Valve has done, but even better and for even cheaper. Really, I think that was Valve's point in the first place, to show everyone that, hey, PC VR users want high quality, cutting edge headsets and will pay for it as long as it's reasonable. Just make it. The seed is planted and everyone knows that the demand is there. Just right now, the only one that does everything the way that we want it is Valve. And I'm gonna keep recommending it until someone gets their act together and makes controllers to compete with the Knuckles, mic and audio quality and comfort and refresh rate that competes with the actual Index headset. Like I said, until then, I'm just gonna keep RMAing it, and my stance is, if you want the best right now, get the Index still. Just don't expect the best reliability, which, like I said, is also why I'm making this video. I think a lot of these things are avoidable as long as you know what to look out for. You can certainly have an Index last a long time, but you gotta be careful with it and follow these tips. I know I'm hard on my headsets, but I've been no harder on this than I was on my Vive or Oculus Rift CV1. And using something every day and having obvious wear doesn't mean that it wasn't taken care of. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed. I want to give a quick thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas like Zymph and Very Evil Shadow. I couldn't be doing any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.